Welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome. I'm starting a brand new series where we take a closer look at Peacemaker. If you have seen my first critique, you know I went deep into multiple topics and characters over the course of 100 minutes. In this series, each video will focus on a single topic from that critique, exploring it in even greater detail and depth. Both my last video and the critique I had posted on Reddit long before it received mixed responses, with people either 100% agreeing or attacking me. The conversation in these responses was primarily regarding the affair plotline. So in today's video, I'll show you my process. I'm going to analyze the storyline the way you would analyze a text in literature or film studies, by looking at behavior, dialogue, repetition, and internal consistency, and then asking which interpretation contradicts the least amount of evidence. First, Rick Flag Jr. What does this scene establish about him? It's the morning before his deployment to Corto Maltese in the bed of his mistress. Relaxed, naked, casual, smug. All the signs of an advanced cheater. The emotional signals are no remorse, no urgency, no guilt, no tenderness. His language patterns are clear: deflection, self-aggrandization, and exaggeration. He has no remorse for June and no concern for her mental or psychological well-being, instead choosing to dehumanize her. He's not afraid of her like the framing wants you to believe, not that it makes sense anyways. June's a victim, Enchantress is the one that's evil, but he lumps them both together with no guilt or shame. She's just a burden to him. He talks about June the way cheaters talk about partners they've already dehumanized. Exaggerated flaws, mock fear, self-aggrandizing responsibility. Only I can handle her, emotional distancing, and justification through victimhood. He has no urgency for the mission, only harcourts getting ready for work. All he cares about is his own personal pleasure, not his duty to the country he's apparently sworn to serve. He has no tenderness towards Amelia either, no moment of him expressing how important she is to him, and cheaters love future faking like they're in some epic fantasy tale. So what does all of this say about his character? His core traits are entitlement, deception, gaslighting, manipulation, casual cruelty, and a lack of responsibility. People like Rick Jr. don't compartmentalize the way fiction likes to pretend they do. If a man betrays intimacy casually, dehumanizes someone he claims to care about, exploits emotionally compromised individuals like June, reframes harm as necessity, doesn't carry the weight of lies and deceit, and uses fear as a justification, then that is his ethics. Full stop. The battlefield doesn't magically ennoble him. It just gives him authority, justification, applause, and distance from consequences. Cheaters cannot be noble. They can only perform nobility preceded and followed by harm. Those are mutually exclusive personalities, and we've seen these kinds of men throughout all of history. Stories love to pretend that personal cruelty doesn't equal to professional cruelty, that cheaters can still be good people and great leaders, when good writing, and more importantly, reality says otherwise. If he can lie to June while sleeping next to someone else, reduce her to a ticking time bomb instead of a person, and enjoy the empower imbalance feeling entitled to both women, then on the battlefield he will rationalize civilian casualties, discard allies, excuse necessary atrocities, framing his choices as tragic but unavoidable, while being praised worst of all. Yet the narrative still insists he was noble, and him attempting to expose Project Starfish is still canon. But James Gunn did the same with Yondu in Galaxy Volume 2. This man willingly delivered children to Ego's genocidal regime to be massacred. He's murdered thousands of innocents and abducted Peter Quill as a child, abusing him as a pet/slave, only to then suddenly have a self-sacrificial send-off. It's aesthetic redemption replacing moral consequence. There is no better proof of this than Rick Flag Sr. himself. Now, who is Rick Flag Sr.? What defines him? Entitlement, womanizing, discard happy, manipulation, and he weaponizes loyalty. He treats people as assets, not humans, believes his judgment is morally superior, embraces sacrificial logic without remorse, and escalates towards containment, control, eradication. Rick Flag Sr. is not flawed but principled. He is authoritarian to the bone. When he says,
"Yeah, boy was an improvement on me in every way. That boy was a better man you could ever dream of being. Better man I could ever dream of being."
It's a confession, not a praise, because improvement depends on what you value. If Rick Sr. valued empathy, restraint, accountability, and moral reflection, then his son would have to demonstrate more of those traits to qualify as better, more noble. But Rick Jr. doesn't, so what does he improve? Smoother manipulation, better emotional camouflage, more palatable cruelty, entitlement without self-doubt, tyranny without the messiness of overt brutality. Authoritarians don't want kinder heirs, they want more effective ones. Rick Jr. is not the opposite of his father, he is his father, but on steroids.
Well, I hope you know you'll always be family. Ricky would have wanted that. I'll look out for you best I can.
If Emilia Harcourt truly did mean something to Rick Jr., Sr., with the grief and love he has for his son, would honor that. He doesn't. He preys upon her with sexual intent that the show never dares explore, but then shows no concern for Emilia's well-being the next 3 years, and only returns to manipulate her feelings to help him. He doesn't bring up that she's betraying his son by forgiving and being in love with his son's killer. He doesn't care. He sees her as manipulable and pliable like his son did, and to men like that, that's all that matters. He even says,
"Yeah, but he loved you as a friend, as well as whatever else. That is different. Really."
What the hell does whatever else even mean? Oh yeah, the show can't admit that out loud. Rick Sr. discards Sasha Bordeaux, a woman who thought is important to him. She and Harcourt become allies in the end. The show clearly sets a parallel between the two women. Sasha was discarded by Sr. and Emilia was used by Jr. But whereas it's easy to read in between the lines of Sr. and Jr., Emilia Harcourt's a slop of contradictions within nearly every line of dialogue regarding the affair. There's firstly no explanation as to why she loves him. The script refuses to commit to the tragic romance, thus Rick Jr. shows her no tenderness, reassurance, or praise. He's exclusively sexualizing her. She also doesn't buy into his manipulations that the Enchantress is scary, even when it directly contradicts her background as a DEO and now Argus agent, both intelligence agencies that closely monitor and study metahuman threats, nor does she show any concern for June's well-being. She's more like, dude, just leave her already, I'm more important to you, stop being so cocky, babe, oh my god. I'm sorry, but that's literally the vibe.
You're the only friend I have, Rick. And I'm pretty sure I'm yours. You wanna fuck that up?
What this line and her delivery signal: emotional exclusivity, perceived mutual dependency, romantic prioritization, entitlement to his loyalty, and belief in being chosen and being special. There is no version of this line spoken sincerely that is compatible with the funeral scene.
He loved you, you know.
Son loved a lot of women, General. Your son loved a lot of women, Rick.
This signals I was just one of many and didn't matter. But she again flips back to the delusion that she was special.
The person who did this, that person, they'll pay. I'll make sure of it.
Her wanting revenge signals emotional significance, moral elevation of Rick Jr., justification of violence on his behalf. Revenge is not neutral grief, it is value assignment. You do not vow vengeance for a friend I wasn't special to. Perhaps she believed that June was the obstacle to their great love, regardless of the other women in his life. But even then, going back to these lines...
You know I'm just not fond of lying.
Yeah, she's a fucking sorceress.
And?
And I'm afraid if I break up with her, she's gonna burrow a hole through the planet.
Dude.
What?
Can you possibly self-aggrandize more?
I'm serious.
I know, that's the problem.
It again still completely breaks the internal logic, because if June were truly the obstacle, Harcourt would treat her at least as a threat, moral dilemma, or as something requiring caution. Instead, she treats Rick's justification as ego posturing, which once again means she does not actually believe the excuse she is supposedly enabling for him cheating on June with her and with other women for years. Pick one psychological reality and commit to it. And the script refuses to do that because it wants a fair drama without the moral fallout, grief without accountability, toughness without ugliness, and sympathy without reckoning. Because Amelia is written as the deluded mistress, the morally upright professional, the grieving, not that close friend, and the vengeful lover all at once, with no reconciliation between all of these. And in the present, she keeps referring to him as...
He was my only friend. You killed him, Chris. How could I possibly?
Still reasserting the belief that she was special, without it affecting her story beyond some romantic angst between her and Chris that gets resolved within seconds. What I also find interesting is the parallel between her and the Earth X Harcourt, Softcourt. Earth X is an inversion of Gun Earth. On Gun Earth, August is a racist, abusive Nazi. On Earth X, he's a loving, morally upright father. On Gun Earth, the Nazis lost. On Earth X, the Nazis won, and so on. Softcourt follows the same pattern. She broke up with Peacemaker because he kept cheating on her, choosing to date Rick Flag Jr. instead, knowing that...
I mean, he's a good guy. He's not gonna fuck around on me. The last thing I need is getting my heart broken again because you're curious, Chris.
Right.
You really hurt me. And if I was ever to reconsider things, I couldn't have somebody fucking around on me all the time.
The narrative unintentionally exposes the truth behind the Gun Earth affair. It proves that Gun Earth Amelia is after all a deluded mistress and Rick Jr. a serial cheater and a bad person. But on Earth X, the same characters are morally upstanding and boundary reinforcing. So, the only narrative explanation that respects as much of the evidence with as little contradiction as possible while staying consistent to real psychology is this story, and it's not pretty. Rick Flag Sr. is vain, womanizing, manipulative, and tyrannical, and all of his worst traits bled into his son, who managed to become more efficient at performing those traits. He's entitled, ego-centered, and performatively noble. He keeps June around as a status symbol and for legitimacy. She is, after all, the host of an ancient entity, which is perfect for his self-aggrandizing image. He uses the excuse that she's an unstable mess to repeatedly cheat on her, on deployments with possibly multiple port wives, co-workers, and so on. How does Rick Jr. see Amelia? She is his co-worker, more importantly, an isolated, emotionally starved, and lonely co-worker. It's the perfect target for a man like him, a woman enamored by him, seeing him as her only emotional anchor in her lonely world, who'd do anything for him in the blink of an eye. Taking all of that into account, there are two possible narratives. Narrative A, the new main wife. He is future prepping her to replace June, leading to a relationship where he will rely on her to cover for all of his intimate betrayals, office violations, and battlefield atrocities, indebting her to him after discarding a sorceress to be with her instead. And Emilia, she'd be left as a hollow shell of the woman that she used to be. Narrative B. He's dangling the carrot in front of her, testing her to see how far she will go for him, extracting as much use as he can from her before discarding her like the rest. Neither are highly plausible. It all depends on his mindset. Narrative A works if he feels as though he needs to reassert control in his life by discarding someone as unstable as the host of the Enchantress for a more manipulable, pliable victim. Narrative B works if he sees June as a non-negotiable to his self-image, perfectly suiting to his self-aggrandization and inflated ego. Emilia's mindset and behavioral outcome mirror grooming dynamics, whether intentional or not. Which narrative does she believe in? That's the thing, she doesn't know. From her perspective, both narratives exist simultaneously. Narrative A represents the hope of elevation, and Narrative B represents fear of disposability. Harcourt doesn't see herself as the mistress or one of many. She sees herself as the real relationship. Her internal narrative is that what she and Rick have is real. She doesn't perceive June or the other women as a threat, but as external obstacles. It's exactly where Rick Jr. wants her to be. He's conditioned her to see the others as meaningless. June is status, optics, power, image, and a thing Rick has to deal with. The other women are noise. Stress outlets, deployment flings, ego fuel, and meaningless coping mechanisms. She believes she's the one who understands him, who sees through him, who doesn't demand him or judge him or threaten his self-image. She feels entitled to him. She sees herself as the constant, as the only one who matters. In her mind, the other women exist because June exists, and that's exactly what Rick wants her to believe. He benefits from her believing that she must prove herself, that patience equals loyalty, endurance equals love, and silence equals strength. She never truly demands commitment because she believes being indispensable is better than being chosen. That's grooming 101. The fact that she swears revenge at his funeral, a violent posthumous exclamation of her love for him, is proof that he has molded her to perfection. He conditioned her to prove devotion through endurance, express love through sacrifice, convert pain into loyalty, and turn anger outward instead of inward. When she says,
So not a lot of women in general. He wasn't my boyfriend.
she's not describing him, she's indicting herself. She's preserving the fantasy that he was good by turning herself into the flaw. She's protecting his purity and innocence, putting him on a pedestal by saying,
He was my only friend. You killed him, Chris. How could I possibly?
while minimizing herself. She's not denying the relationship because it was real, but because she believes she failed to qualify for it. She failed to prove herself to him. That's self-erasure, not indifference. Compare that to Rick Sr. As soon as the going went tough, he dismissed Sacha Bordeaux. Sr. is manipulative, yes, but only for as long as he can bother to keep his victims useful. Jr. has mastered long-term manipulation and emotional damage to his victims. Just take a look at this scene.
Maybe it's worth it.
What?
A hole through the planet. Me and you.
He's spiking her emotional investment, inviting her to imagine herself as chosen, powerful, and exceptional, the reason he might change his life. But notice he still hasn't said he will do anything. He's dangling possibility, not intention.
You're the only friend I have, Rick. And I'm pretty sure I'm yours. You wanna fuck that up?
I already explained what this line means earlier. She's testing if she matters enough for him to act.
Newsflash, Amelia Harcourt. We already fucked that up.
This line is the cruelest of them all. He's almost amused by her vulnerability. He turns her confession into damage already done, something she participated in ruining, and shifts the guilt onto her. He's saying, "This was already broken, don't expect more," and destabilizing her. Her reaction here is the key. She's emotionally cut open by what he said, absorbing the guilt and shame. I do not wish for anyone to tell me that she's not heartbroken here and turning that pain inwards.
I'm serious.
That is not reassurance. It is damage control without accountability. He watched her, analyzed if she'll pull away, get angry, or demand clarity. She did none of that. He had to throw faux sincerity at her to keep her attached without commitment.
Come on. You ship out to Corto Maltese in 2 hours.
Here she aborts the emotional moment and redirects the responsibility onto herself, recentering his needs and his schedule. Instead of reacting to the harm, Emilia immediately tries to repair the situation by making herself useful to him. The affair exists narratively for one reason. It's to manufacture prepackaged angst for a future pairing. The anguish about Chris killing Rick resolves in seconds. She still ends up with Chris anyways. No lasting reckoning, no sustained guilt, and no moral cost. The affair wasn't a tragedy, it was a speed bump. The show wanted all outcomes at once without paying for any of them. They want Rick to be noble and a serial cheater, Emilia to be special and interchangeable, the affair to be meaningful and dismissible, and for the betrayal to matter, but not obstruct endgame romance. And those things cannot coexist without gaslighting the audience, so the writing does something cowardly. It blurs definitions. It was love, but also a friendship. He was a womanizer, but he loved her. She was different, but also one of many. It mattered deeply, but also didn't matter at all. That's by definition narrative evasion. If this were an indie drama, critics and fans alike would clock it instantly, but because it's wrapped in Gunn's trademark tone, the audience is trained to read damage as depth. It's easy to write a healthy romance, but they chose not to do that, which means the toxicity isn't accidental, it's a shortcut. And the Peacemaker problem exposes everything. If Rick truly was her great love, her moral anchor, and her defining bond, then Chris killing him would fracture her permanently. But it doesn't, because Rick was never written as her story, he was written as a narrative obstacle. The show treats his death like a sad chapter, a temporary blockage, and a mood beat. I've said this in my first video, the show simultaneously treats Rick Flag Jr.'s death as the center of the world and like it doesn't matter whatsoever. Because the story refuses to own its own implications, and that's the worst sin a narrative can commit. And if we grant the most charitable writer-favoring interpretation that Rick genuinely loved Emilia, their relationship was real, deep, and meaningful, and that he mattered to her as a true romantic partner, then the story writes that Emilia Harcourt ends up romantically involved with the man who killed the love of her life. This is psychologically obscene unless the story explicitly interrogates it. And it doesn't. And if we accept the idea that Emilia Harcourt was a victim of grooming, emotional manipulation, and long-term exploitation by Rick Flag Jr., the romance between her and Peacemaker still collapses under basic psychological reality, because trauma does not disappear simply because the abuser dies. And it does not resolve itself by attaching to the man who killed him. If Emilia was the victim, then Rick's death would leave behind confusion, guilt, self-blame, unresolved attachment, and moral disorientation. And let's grant the narrative its own preferred interpretation. It still collapses under its own rules. Rick Flag Jr., the moral contradiction isn't small, it's foundational. He is framed as disciplined, rigid, lawful, and principled, someone whose identity is built on restraint and duty. Cheating isn't just a personal flaw, it requires sustained deception, compartmentalization, instrumentalizing another person, and prioritizing self-image over responsibility. Traits that directly contradict the archetype the narrative insists Rick Jr. occupies. A man who can rationalize prolonged betrayal in his private life is by definition someone who can lie convincingly, justify unethical shortcuts, and place his desires and ego above institutional integrity. So the show is asking us to believe two incompatible things at once. Rick Jr. is a morally rigid, lawful good figure, but he also repeatedly dehumanizes his partner without remorse. In this affair wrecks Emilia Harcourt's character arguably even more. When the show is consistent, her core traits are professionalism, structure, emotional restraint, competence, and intolerance for chaos and manipulation. Choosing to gleefully engage in infidelity with a superior and deluding herself that she's different directly contradicts her rigidity standards and her no-nonsense worldview. I want to make it very clear that I'm not saying that tough women like her can't be manipulated, abused, or be victims. I'm saying that this specific form of manipulation is incompatible with her established psychology. She's introduced and reinforced to us as highly perceptive, professionally rigid, allergic to excuses, and self-respecting to a fault. That doesn't make her invulnerable, it just makes her hard to access. A woman like that does not fall into open affairs, being one of many, and begging him to just leave her already. Not because she's flawless, but because those situations violate her internal rules. She could be manipulated through restraint, unspoken tension, emotional repression, moral conflict, and denial, not indulgence. This behavior, as shown in Season 2, requires a different character. This writing is damaging because to make this affair work, the narrative has to replace her psychological spine. It has to lower her standards, dull her perception, and strip her of moral boundaries. And that's not character development, it's replacement. And don't even get me started on Amanda Waller-Light. I've already poured my heart out in my last video about how much I despise him and his wasted potential. Just the mere thought of him makes my blood boil. Let me say this plainly. Fiction is not reality. Fiction is designed, and because it's designed, it carries responsibility. In real life, people can be incoherent, hypocritical, unresolved, and never face consequences. In stories, that incoherence is either intentional commentary or structural failure. There is no neutral middle. Reality doesn't owe us clarity, but stories do. Because every choice in fiction is chosen, framed, emphasized, repeated, and resolved, or deliberately not resolved. When a story introduces a moral conflict, dramatizes emotional harm, frames a character sympathetically, and then refuses to clarify its ethical position, it isn't being realistic, it's being careless or avoidant, and avoidance in storytelling always reads as endorsement. A story must make its values legible. If a constructed narrative cannot answer, what does this behavior mean? Why did it happen? How did it happen? Who is harmed? Who is empowered? What changes? What doesn't change because of it? Then the story collapses under its own weight. Not emotionally, but structurally. Ambiguity doesn't save bad construction. I'm not asking for fiction to be moralistic, I'm asking it to be coherent. And coherence requires a psychological continuity, cause and effect, and value alignment between action and framing. And when those break, the audience can feel it, even if they can't articulate why. And an author does not reveal their beliefs by what they say in interviews. They reveal them by what actions are rewarded, what actions are excused, who receives empathy, who is humiliated or erased, whose pain is aestheticized, and whose harm is framed as tragic rather than unethical. You can't hide that, ever. Even if the author tries to. Oh, especially if they try to. Stories don't teach morals through dialogue, they teach morals through framing. If a character does something awful and the narrator responds with mournful music, emotional absolution, then the moral position is clear whether the author admits it or not. Intent is irrelevant. Once a story is constructed, its ethics live in cause and effect, narrative emphasis. Once a story is constructed, its ethics live in cause and effect, narrative emphasis, consequences, or lack thereof. Even if the author didn't mean to communicate a moral stance, but did anyway, that doesn't absolve them, it indicts their craft. James Gunn is a perfect case study, not because he's uniquely evil, but because his patterns are consistent. Emotionally abusive men framed as misunderstood, moral reckoning is replaced with emotional catharsis, humor is used as insulation against ethical weight, and consequences displaced onto others. Critics have been saying this about him for over a decade, especially since Galaxy Volume 2. When his work is praised, it's praised for its humor, energy, and emotional beats, not for its structure or integrity. Yet the only arguments most people can come up with are dismissals, personal attacks, and non-arguments. Nobody engages with the arguments I make. Instead, I get comments like, "You're reading too much into it." If a story introduces an affair, contradictory dialogue, repeated framing, and emotional consequences, then analyzing those elements is not overreading, it's engaging with the text on the level it presents itself. It's like telling a chemist that they're overanalyzing the ratio in their compounds. People are complicated. In narrative terms, that sentence is rendered meaningless unless followed by how they're complicated, where the contradictions live, and what psychological mechanisms explain them. In good writing, complexity does not equate to contradiction. Complexity is tension that resolves through casuality. People are complicated does not explain.
And I'm pretty sure I'm yours. You wanna fuck that up?
Versus,
He wasn't my boyfriend.
relationships are complicated, again, rendered meaningless unless followed by an explanation as to how they are complicated. You have an extreme worldview. Some of my most beloved characters in all of media include characters like Rex Blode, Tony Soprano, and Ibrahim Pasha, all of whom have cheated on their partners. But here's the catch: their cheating is a symptom of their established complex character traits, and the narrative does not excuse them. In Rick Flag Jr.'s case, his established character traits of nobility, rigidity, discipline, and loyalty are fundamentally and unequivocally incompatible with cheating, womanizing, manipulating, and dehumanizing. And Emilia Harcourt's established traits of professionalism, low tolerance for BS, and unwaveringly high standards do not naturally translate into being a woman that's a doormat for another man's ego. Why do you even watch things? This is a non-argument. It's a conversation extinguisher. I watch things because I love storytelling as a form of art. Critique is important because it holds the media to a high standard. I never said that characters must be perfect. I never said that people can't change or redeem themselves. And I never said that cheating is worse than murdering hundreds of innocent people. I only said that this specific flaw contradicts this specific character's established narrative role in this specific story. The writers didn't think about it that deeply. That's really not the rebuttal you think it is. It's practically admission that the writers chose not to engage with their own writing. That writers with decades of experience chose to laze out. And that I, as a 23-year-old woman with no academic training, has to do the work the writers refused to do. Rick wanted to leave June, he was just scared of the Enchantress. So let's grant that interpretation. Let's ignore the smugness, the casual nudity, the emotional manipulation, the grooming dynamics, the father-son parallels, and the fact that the Enchantress is an ancient psychic entity that has canonically made characters uneasy around her because she knows all of your secrets. Thus, cheating on her would be impossible. all of it. Let's accept, for the sake of argument, that he is genuinely afraid of the Enchantress. Now ask the only question that actually matters. If he's afraid of the Enchantress, what does that make June? June is not a monster. She is not a villain. She is not choosing this. She is a victim carrying an ancient entity capable of ending the world. And Rick knows that. This defense actually implies if Rick is too scared to leave June, then what he is doing is this: staying with the woman he claims to fear, while cheating on her repeatedly, while dehumanizing her as unstable, while exploiting another emotionally vulnerable woman, while placing his personal gratification above global safety. And that's not fear, that is moral cowardice. If he truly believed June was a planetary threat, then his responsibility as a soldier, as a leader, as a supposedly principled man the narrative desperately wants you to believe he is, would be to protect her, to seek help, to minimize stress and betrayal, and to remove himself from situations that could destabilize her. Instead, he does the opposite. And I'll say this again. If Rick Flag Jr. can justify betraying, deceiving, and emotionally destabilizing a woman who is traumatized, not in control of her own body, and capable of mass destruction, then what do you think he does when civilians are inconvenient, allies become liabilities, orders conflict with optics, and violence can be reframed as necessary? You don't magically become ethical under pressure. You reveal what you already are. Because the only way this works is if Rick believes he's untouchable, that he can lie to, betray, and emotionally fracture the host of an ancient world-ending entity and still walk away clean. And that's not fear. That's hubris so extreme it borders on delusion. If it felt emotional, it worked. Mood cannot replace structure, vibes cannot replace psychology, and aesthetic intensity cannot replace cause and effect. When a story asks us to feel grief, love, or tragedy, it is also asking us to accept a chain of logic about who these people are, why they act the way they do, and what their actions mean. When that logic collapses, emotion doesn't become deeper. It just becomes manipulative. Feelings are not evidence, music is not character development, and slow motion grief is not moral coherence. If a story cannot survive basic psychological scrutiny, then its emotional impact isn't profound, it's borrowed. And that's not complexity, that's outsourcing the writing to the viewer. People often try to gotcha me with lazy rebuttals, so here's an actual gotcha. Why would Rick Flag Sr., unknown womanizer and manipulator, acknowledge that his son also cheated and was a womanizer, and still call him an improvement on him in every way? Unless he is confessing, my son wasn't better morally, he was just more efficient at being a tyrant. And you can't make the argument that he's being delusional about his son's nobility, because that still confirms Rick Jr.'s the same as his father. It's just a superhero/comedy show. Take a look at this tweet James Gunn made. And if Gunn says that it is serious enough to demand emotional engagement, it is serious enough to withstand analysis.